Hey, Satanico here, once again for Godlovescomics, reading the last and final episode of Alan Moore's Miracleman. Well, not the last episode, but the last segment. Probably break this up into a couple of different, two or three different videos, but it's only been since November when the last one was finished. Sorry, I've been very, very busy and haven't even found time during a quarantine to read this, but what better time than to read about the end of the world than now? So let's get started, shall we? As you can see, a beautiful cover. Miracleman, Book 3, Olympus, such is the Marvel collection, and the original writer, as we all know, is the great Alan Moore, who, as he's done with so many of his works, has disavowed its publication by Marvel, I do believe. And art by John Totleman, who was Alan Moore's frequent collaborator, artistic collaborator, along with Stephen Bissett and sometimes Tom Yates and Alfredo Akela and a few others on Swamp Thing, which we've also read, was fantastic. So here you see Miracleman, Book 3, Olympus. Chapter 1 is Kronos. There is a lot of ephemera, once again, as you can see, legends and apocrypha, and a lot of behind the scenes, a lot of sketches and everything else, which is fantastic. But in the process of trying to read this in a linear fashion, it is very complicated when you keep coming across all of these sketches and everything else. It's, auxiliary material that is really cool, but I wish it was kind of segmented off into its own space instead of interspersed between the stories. There's a new cover, Miracleman by, that's not a new cover, but that's also a cover by John Totleman. Looks like 87. And there you go. 1987. The July morning, big, hot, empty, not quite broken. The toy city, emerging story by story from a cool gray haze, barely awake but dreaming hard. Dreaming of new music, new thoughts, new paintings, a new world every day. Every day. Sometimes toy citizens clamber up here asking favors. This disease needs curing. That river moving. Sometimes I say yes. They wear helmets for the thin air. Wear fear in damp crescents beneath their shirt arms. Funny little bubbleheads. Eventually, one will suffer a heart attack while imploring me to square the circle of grant immortality. Immortality! Father, how you would have laughed to see this. Your face is cold now, tanned silver by the spotlights. The July morning, big, hot, empty, silent, crossing to the lectern. Climbing it stepped. Rather than flying, I open a book with steel pages. I have legends to write, tales of how it feels to live in a mythology. I sit here in my still high place and test the keenness of my stylus against an upraised fingertip. There, a needle of bloody light, an aftertaste of ozone. I'm ready to begin. Olympus 3, Chapter 1, Kronos, as he sits, not quite on the Iron Throne, and writes in a book with steel pages. After creation came a time when young gods fought their Titan fathers. The time was November 1982, the place less certain. Where did it begin? With me or her? With him? Bates, the adversary? Yes. Yes, perhaps it began with him. And they started calling me names. Oh, Johnny. I'm sorry. You wanted to mix with the other children, but some of them are, difficult. They said, here's Master Bates. Oh, don't cry. Look, since your recovery, you've been doing so well. You mustn't let these bullies set you back. Stand up to them. You don't understand. I wanted to, but... Yeah. Yes, it's okay, Johnny. You wanted to what? Nothing important. It doesn't matter. I'd like to be on my own, please. And in the place of his confinement, the adversary tested the shackles that bound him, tugging at them. They creaked, but did not break. For my own part, it was the frail human chain binding me to this world that seemed most in danger of snapping. I was so afraid she was going to crack up. Liz, I was afraid for Liz. Mike, nothing's wrong with me or Winter. She's just a healthy baby with a healthy appetite. And she's perfectly normal. I'm her mother. I should know. Liz, she's a month old and she has teeth. 2 weeks ago, that would have worried you sick. Look, I'm confused. Sometimes everything's fine. I feel great, but sometimes I feel so weird. Weird. As if my feelings aren't my own anymore. As if they get switched on and off. It's probably just postnatal depression. Listen, leave me alone for a while, okay? We'll talk later. And I stepped out, and the November wind drove nails of rain into my brow, and in my heart I was afraid for all that I loved. See her watching him from the door, and obviously she's being controlled now by the infant that they had, who has superpowers herself, and is already extraordinarily precocious at just the age of 1 month. Thus I walked amongst men and man's guise, unaware of forces gathering and pennants raised somewhere beyond the dark, beyond the rain. Turning the heavy page, I continued. Out in the dark, the windswept park offered its bleak consolation. Seeing the bottom panels where it says ladies and gents, just as he passes, one comes out of the ladies, one comes out of the gents, both doors close. And I walked on and did not know that titans walked at my heels, not until it was too late. The bandstand. I remember I paused at the bandstand. Its paintwork was sore with welts and blisters, adolescent lovers had gouged their names here and there, signing the site of their clumsy fumblings in the corner as if it were a masterpiece. Ringed by skeleton shrubbery, it looked haunted. Mr. Moran, we are wished to speak to you. My name. They knew my name. Their manner was formal, their accents vaguely South American. I thought of the spook show. I thought of Gargunza. Moran, no. Afraid not. My name's Johnson. We think not so. Mr. Moran, we are wished to discuss your other self. Now he begins running, which they're running after him. Behind the chicken wire of the aviary sat pale, unconscious canaries. From the gloom of the peacock enclosure came the sound of women sleepwalking, the hems of their nightgowns rustling, dragging across the gravel. That's, of course, the feathers of the peacock, so that's Alan Moore's poetic description of that. Gimota. In the peacock enclosure, as if from a shared nightmare, the sleepwalkers began to scream. Hopefully he didn't destroy the peacocks, but it looks like he did. Just by changing into Komodo. I'm sorry. It's a Miracleman, of course. And then they speak a very alien language and very alien script. And then the light of the older heaven then the light of an older heaven than his was in my eyes. Than this was in my eyes. Sorry, that's a very confusing phrase. And when again I saw Titans. And now we see their true selves, which are rather disturbing. I knew them not for Titans then, knew not that Kronos was arrived to confiscate the thunderbolts of a delinquent Zeus. There was before such concepts were defined or inked white hot upon immortal steel. This was before the time of names and naming, in days that knew a bloodier imperative, knew no creed save ballistics, no faith but in the ritual of tense and spring and thrust. And he just launches himself at them, tries to punch them, and they do something that just repels him like he was nothing. Tears into another bird enclosure, this time the parrots. Lips painted with blood, I clung to the bird shit streaked chain link, where convicts had marked off the days of their sentence in chalk on penitentiary walls. Well, the convicts are the parrots. The Titans advanced, my confidence departing with the birds. The nearer one rushed at me, stinking of iodine and squeaking as it moved. Moments before it had been a young woman. I braced myself, a clockwork man powered by adrenaline, mainsprings, a desperate and violent engine. And that was almost sufficient to its task. He seems to have torn its head off, or at least embedded his fist into its throat. It's screaming in anguish. And then, we're seeing more of the alien script. A train from hell, it crouched in the shunting yard smoke of its transformation. I had but two bodies. Apparently they possessed many. I began to understand the extent of my predicament. So that's an incredibly fascinating concept introduced by Alan Moore. You think that they've been killed or destroyed, at least this one has been fatally wounded and transforms into another body. And I would say a more benign body, but it also looks sort of turtle shellish, much like you might see in The Fifth Element, which was designed, those creatures were designed by Mobius, while failing to appreciate its breadth. All right, I'm coming. Now who? Damn. Oh, what? What was? Wind? Back then, my perspective was limited. I had not yet seen the view from Olympus. Had I been older, I'd surely have felt the stars shift as a terrible new zodiac sign aligned itself. As it was, I knew only pain, bright feathers, thunderbolts, war brutes. They trampled, snorting their steam, worked my face like warm, wet clay in their jackhammer hands. Assailed by incomprehensible beast, I awaited a death without meaning in a park I'd forgotten the name of. Mortality smacked my face once, twice. There's the peacock feathers. I wondered how long it had been since I had last told Liz I loved her. I wanted desperately to feel my daughter's hair, unbelievably fine, unbelievably soft, against my cheek. And that was my error. The squall of fists abated. The monsters regarded each other as if surprised. In English, recognizable, despite a voice that buzzed, one voiced in a single word the most frightening utterance I could imagine. Daughter. A non-verbal exchange ensued, after which one resumed the beating while the other fled across the gray night grass. I screamed after it uselessly. They read minds, and hadn't known my child existed before I told them. The brute crouched upon my chest, grinding sparks from its jaws. They showered hot upon my cheek, upon the petrol of my desperate rage. There's more alien script. Its accomplice would already have left the park. Fracturing two of my own fingers, I punched through its abdomen, immediately drenched in the scalding fluids, steaming and phosphorescent. Shuddering in the way that pigs do upon realizing their throats are cut, it pronounced 5 dreadful syllables. Briefly, I embraced an infant son and scribbled bright autistic crayon lines across each retina. It became something like a giant severed hand, a sticky mouth glistening in its palm. I pulverized one of its knuckles. The black lips writhed, incontinent, about a profanity coined beneath other constellations. I could not stay the recital of its bare incendiary haiku. I could not slam the cover shut upon its hideous vocabulary. It spoke. God clapped its hands. Its new form looked and felt like a shark turned inside out. I promised that my wife should not fall prey to these November horrors. Knowing already that my promise was meaningless, tisk, not again. It's all right, Winter. I'll be back in a second. It's only a silly wind that's blown the crack. Ah! Oh no. Oh God, Jesus, please. What do you want? You keep away. You get away from me or... Oh. Assuming you can still understand English, in this body, I want you to know that I've just crushed your larynx. You see, there are some situations you just can't talk your way out of. Funny? To have seen her then, as Liz described her later, cold and glittering, a statue of cut glass, immaculate save for gauntlets darkened by unearthly blood. Aphrodite, risen from the churning foam, where fell the manhood of Kronos? So did the infant just mature herself instantaneously in effort to protect herself and her mother? Seems so. And more powerful, by far, than her father. My words smolder, cooling upon the open page. I cross to the windows, heels dusted with sparks. More than 1,000 floors below, wind-driven clouds drag zebra skins of sunlight and shadow across the waking city. To the north, the same breeze drives the painted sails of windmill forests that wring electricity from clear skies. The great vanes turn, serene as kites, gorgeous and hypnotic as the fans of geishas. Looking down, London becomes a composition of smoke blues and 40s film gray, viewed by an abstract painter or one suffering from aphasia. The mirror-walled buildings are sky aquariums, imaginary clouds swimming under glass. On a traffic loom, needle streams of cars dart south, dart north, on green, pausing on red while the shuttle moves east to west. From animated hoardings, rouged boys sneer at pedestrians, grown pale in the shade of the new Fuji. The shade of the new Fuji would be Mount Fuji. I guess there's a new mountain. Each morning, I watch them, my marvelous eyes piercing clothing and skin, able to see at different speeds, slow motion lens, the older ones a bovine animal dignity, Each evening I walk the airless battlements, and scattered to the night's cold vectors the ashes of their unopened prayers. To be continued. So you have some really amazing prose from Alan Moore describing what it's like to be a god among men, better than almost any other comics writer has ever described it. Seeing things at incredibly different speeds, and describing the bovine animal dignity of older human beings. Miracleman 11, May 1987, cover by John Totleben. I don't know if that was the cover that ran. It looks like, or at least, I'm not sure. It was around for Eclipse. Okay, Miracleman 11, original cover painting, oils on canvas by John Totleben. Not fully satisfied with the published version of the cover, Totleben revised it after publication, bringing out the detail in Miracleman's face and removing the Tinkerbell effect, which is his shimmering effect. He also brightened the background, added leaves to the trees, and changed the key's eyes from yellow to red. Interesting, okay. As you see, once again, I said there was a lot of ephemera. I mean, it's really cool to see the pencil pages. It just disrupts the flow in this case. So, take the risk of skipping ahead and hope that I find the right page. And that's what we're looking for. Never mind the distraction of Mick Anglo's older comic. It's also interesting. But you have Miracleman number 12. Should have another interior cover here. Book 3, Olympus once again. There's the cover. This is from 2002 by John Totleben. Although certainly published before then. Published in 1987. And this is Aphrodite. 1987. 747's bass note falls away through the drizzle towards Heathrow, a red-hot printed circuit sizzling far below. By moonlight, London's a floodlit asylum. The jet's shadow slides down the western face of Olympus like the corpse of a black paper bird born upon a chrome Niagara. Though diminished by the jets and telephones, each day the world grows conceptually larger. As a focal point, this big world demands a big house with big people to fill it. When politicians and movie stars prove inadequate, only gods remain. In 1987, Heaven's an infinite department store, 1,000 floors of piped-in devotional music haunting its center well. We sell humanity a language of ideas to articulate its times. The faith to remain unafraid as society explodes into increasingly chimerical shapes about them. We describe the new thing that is coming, and they worship us. Riding an invisible elevator, I descend past zoos and museums. All human experience spirals past me, a waterspout of biplanes, orchids, beautiful uniforms. In the high 700s, channels have been cut through the pyramid, permitting interior weather. A goddess lives here, thunderstorms pressing their bruised purple lips against the glass walls of her chamber, suspended amidst clouds and rain. On lower stories, wise and tactful mechanisms coordinate this planet's peace. Up here, she composes its love. Though rare and iridescent, pigments glisten on the palette of mankind's desire. They obstinately choose to sketch their love in charcoal, while in secret dreams they smear their fingers through forbidden violets, oranges, and blues. They must be taught, though, colorblind with guilt, to fathom the impending borealis, taught a new chromatic scale of passions and delights. 500,000 calls each second sing through her computer switchboard, from the shy, the plain, the lonely, sifted by discrete automata, personal details match contacts arranged, and comforts given, an electric shoulder offered to her heartsick world. And the sperm bank's frozen seed awaits barren recipients, selected from across the planet's 2 more generations. There'll be thousands like us. Thousands. As Zeus loved mortal women in the forms of golden sparks, we know humans in a shower of phosphor dots as objects of mankind's desire, both spiritual and carnal. Countless solitary climaxes are reached each night, their feverish devotions, eyes clenched tight, a catechism of gasp. So, he's watching porn on rather, I guess, advanced equipment, even though it looks like a flat screen, from 1987, of course. Looks like almost like Patrick Nagel paintings, all the same print above, and then you see, I guess, 2 VHS tapes, Guide to Higher Ecstasies and Tantric Sex 1. Maybe those are books, I'm not sure. That would make them less dated, since printed books are still in vogue, while VHS tapes, not so much. As icons, there are silk screens, videos, and by satellite she operates a worldwide cable system network, scheduled visitations to the chosen, to the faithful, to the hard, and to the aching. Goddess of the pulp lust, gold Chrysler glamour, I ascend into her soundtrack of forgotten high school pop and digitally sampled torch songs. I rise up to eyes like glaciers, lips like fate. I leave saliva in a chill glass and think of when I saw her first. This stark Madonna of the quantum age, my muse, my Venus. Miracleman, Chapter 2, Aphrodite. If this is all in fact true, I mean, it's running this incredible computerized database of like a helpline to the world for all manner of things, and also maintaining a sperm bank in which to generate more superhumans. Now we're back to 1982. The mill of punishment that ground my body paused and turned what I assumed to be its head, as if it heard a murder in the gloom where I heard only rain from dead leaves. It did hear a murder of its mate or of its partner. There came a word with syllables that rattled like night train steaming nearer through the blackness, with its cyclops lantern glaring till it hit, and all the world was burned away in one white moment. Having exchanged a form that pulverized for one that it flew, it lifted eerily into the rain. No anchor save its shadow dragged across the grass, deflating as it went. Guessing its purpose, I gave chase. Obviously, it's heading towards their home. Too fast to be seen except by each other, we were dangerous blurs in a world without motion, dodging between the freeze-frame birds that hung trapped in a solid glass sky. Moving so fast that everything else just seems frozen in motion, so nothing's in danger of them running into it, even birds. We dropped as one, a nanosecond's breath between us, while below the street where I lived as a man grew larger, closer, rapidly embroidering itself with detail and approach. Through the splintered door, the distant cars and incidental noise, altered by velocity, became a violin crescendo, shrieking, rising as I hurtled up the stairs only to be confronted by bereavement, though not mine. Yeah, he's pretty shocked. He was racing back to protect her, and no need to do so. And then a little bit of alien language, and then wait, he's dying. We must be having truce while help is summoned. Help? Help to kill us? Do you think I'm insane? No. No harm to you. All is different now. Please. His throats are crushed. He cannot speak or change. This body deteriorates. Let it. You weren't so squeamish about trying to destroy my only bodies. So, wait. Let it do what it must. It won't harm us now. Who? Wait. Wait a minute. You're Miraclewoman? Mike, do you know her? That thing came through the door and saved us. Please, what's happening? I don't know. Back in the 50s, I remember meeting, but no. No, I mean, that was a dream, wasn't it? One of Gargunza's illusions? And anyway, you died. Mike, look, what is this? What are these monsters? Please, if I am to establish a link with my people, I must have silence. His true death draws near. Come. We'll leave them in peace and go into the other room and trade stories. Okay, I mistakenly thought that somehow the baby had matured itself into this Miraclewoman, but I'm wrong, and this is another of Gargunza's mythologies and manufacturing come to life. Nearby, surrounded by a reassuring mess of domesticity, two dream beasts lurked, while Liz and I sat, stunned, as all reality seeped from our lives, and listened to the angel tell her tale. And it's funny, Alan Moore referred to her as a Madonna, and then, which of course is not the pop star, but then here it does actually look like Madonna of that era, 1987, when she had the short hair. Looks like she was modeled after her a bit. I'm Avril Lear, and yes, we've met before. Out of the 60s, that at least was real. For me, it all began in 55, year of the Warsaw Pact. A wind of change blew west, hiked Monroe's skirt around her thighs, and I became a god. You'll recognize the details. Orphan, going to her aunt's along a terrace street. A car pulls up, she's dragged inside and chloroformed. All newsprint costumed heroines have origins like that. Schoolgirl detective yarns commencing with a foreigner, a car. Then he undid my shirt, and it became a different story. There was a halva on his breath. Even above the ether, blood drums pounded in my ears like all of the pistons of light would bloom and fade upon the windscreen, bloom and fade. We reached a bunker, not the Zarathustra Project, which I learned of later. These researchers were unknown except for the old man and his assistant. The Air Force remained unaware, though its diverted funds equipped Gargunza's secret lab. Gargunza, he made me. We're almost siblings, you and I. He cloned me, raised a near-perfect body in his vats, and then sent it into infraspace, dressed in a suit of brilliant blue, all red stiletto heels and 50s lines. Given the taste of my couturier, upon reflection, I could have done worse. So that's kind of a play on the creation of these 50s heroines, golden age heroines, and the idea that they were always kind of made bodacious and put in these, ridiculous costumes by their creators, the artists and the writers. For reasons wholly unconnected with the military, use used that his superiors had intended when they funded you. He kept 3 of us here. Myself, a hideous altered dog, and Terrence Rebick, who became Young Nastyman. There I see you're starting to remember. Poor Terry. Air Force orphan, just like us. They put an implant in his head, gave him a skin-tight suit of black, and dropped him down their warp well into the infraspace to join the rest of Dr. G's menagerie. Except that he and I were special cases. Granted, you and your 2 partners were abused, but you were known about. And thus Gargunza dared not go too far. Not so with us. With us, he could do whatever he liked. Anything he liked. He first became a rapist, age 14. Did you know that? With us. He'd first dismiss his aide, and then by the dream screen's light undress, save for his spectacles. I watched the videotapes he'd made years later. Naked, he was pitiful, a troll mounting a goddess while she slept. Watching myself violated, I just laughed. He'd had no part of me. I was elsewhere, a cosmos full of colors and emotions that were simple, bright, and wonderfully garish. Free from hindering logic, I explored a realm of incandescent comic book ideas. He gave me freedom and a perfect world receiving in return my crotch. I laughed and laughed. Well, that's a rather grim turn, but... And as you can see, they changed the art quite a bit to represent Golden Age art and some of the good girl style that you might see in that top panel. Stuff like Phantom Girl and but drawn much more discreetly here, I would say. But then, of course, he made our dreams, eventually intruding there as well. The fantasies he fed to me were things of scented gags and rope burns. All his imagery, as ever, had pulp origins. As ever, pulp origins. I mean, this is very much almost a satire of comic book creators, male comic book creators of that age and probably still currently. Terry, I think he took a liking to, allowing him the greater license that a villain's role provides, and step by step leading him onto the plateaus of depravity that previously were Gargunza's alone. I'm positive it wasn't all for fun. He tabulated each response, hoping to control our desire. For if he knew which strings of lust to tug, then he could breed us. Could breed me with Rebek, Dauntless Bates, or you until he had a super child to do with as he pleased. Towards this end, I suffered torture chambers, manacles, a host of disciplinary machines, lurid mirages he endowed with post-war men's mag cover gloss. That mind, so brilliant, so perverse and inexhaustible in its invention, coining new scenarios, new psychosexual dramas, constantly aspiring to a point somewhere beyond the next extreme, with no Sir Denys Archer cursing his excess. Of course, he went too far. Of course, where else could he have gone? He went too far. Was too far too late in realizing Terry's mind had gone too far as well? Gargunza's lust shaped our reality, with episodes embellished endlessly repeated, all internal logic dashed aside, impatient for the next scene of humiliation, thumbing through the pages of our lives. Until, deranged by inconsistency, Rebek awoke, burst screaming from the lab, was gone. The waking world he treated as another dream, a psychopathic landscape where one's actions had no consequences. From foreign ports came words of an insatiable brigand with hideous strengths and hideous appetites. Afraid Gargunza knew his secret supermen would shortly stand revealed. Without arousing suspicion, Gargunza suggested the Miracleman track an imaginary foe, and then return testing their obedience. Hoping you'd capture Rebek discreetly by fearing exposure, Gargunza accelerated his breeding program. He'd wake me to join your hunt, letting supernature take its course. Designed to segue with reality, Gargunza made my last mirage his fiercest. Wet, colorful, and violent. Flying fish in heat. Rebek and I fought while cold waves slapped salt in recent wounds. I dreamed a hail of leather fists, then dreamed unconsciousness. Gargunza next conveyed my slumbering form down to the beach. Administering a stimulant, he woke me to continue where my dreams had ceased. Awake, I had but one concern. Young Nastyman was free. The Miracleman family must be warned. Hair trigger senses traced your auras to the mountain where your glorious young superman slept, dumped there by Gargunza. Leaf-veined wrinkles and bright uniforms darkened by dew. Strewn in disarray yet somehow classically arranged, Spartans exhausted, drained by war or love, on waking though surprised to welcome help. An unexpected female counterpart seemed normal in the context of your lives. An unexpected female counterpart seemed normal. Meaning that the Marvel family, there were always at least one girl, not just the Marvel family, but he's just saying these kind of super teams disappeared. There's no questioning of this. You all showed off like schoolboys. Bates, the crying girls, stole frightened glances at my legs. Dauntless sulked in silence. Costume red as a slapped face. He suggested separating, resenting my intrusion on your boys' club. Unaware of his motives, you praised the idea, blind to the signs that seemed so obvious to me. Though annoyed, I pitied him. He loved you, and you didn't know. Alone again, I followed faded aura traces, unmistakably Rebek's, to a bunker on Salisbury Plain. So, this entire time, he's telling one story, but he's also doing, a parody of comics from this time period. So he's suggesting, of course, that, Miracleman's boy sidekick is in love with him, as that's the theory always bandied about by these sidekicks. Most famously Batman and Robin, but throughout most of comics. And you can read into whatever you want. Inside it was spacious but deserted. Experiencing creeping deja vu, gazing at the couches and the screens, I grew unaccountably afraid. What had I stumbled upon? The videotapes provided my answer, watching my shock, fury, horror, and amusement finally crystallized into exhilaration. Knowing the truth, I was free. A cartoon figure ripped from her paper universe and given a 3D world. Besotted by my liberty, I swore to keep it. Scanning accelerated videos, skimming files, I showered in pictures, words, numbers, till my sensitized mind stung unbearably, exquisitely. Gargunza and crashed aliens aside, I learned about my value. Too great for Gargunza to relinquish while I lived. Thus I must die. Resumed my search, Resumed, my search led to a bleak Icelandic brothel, unstaffed save for Rebek's woman. 3 days dead. I doubt he knew or cared. I explained everything, suggested faking death, tricking Gargunza, but deranged by the collision of grim present and fictitious past, Rebek attacked. He was so dissipated by his crumbling reason and decaying will, nothing in his tormented eyes except a plea for death. Above volcanoes gargling molten rock, we fought. I can't recall who propelled our fight towards their smoldering spark-infested mouths. In cooling tower acoustics, curses rang like anvils. Lukewarm lava splashed against my flanks. I swilled some. Round my mouth, spat fire. Poor Terry. Powers fading. First perspired, then blistered. Eyebrows singeing. Tears streaming briefly on my cheeks. He flickered like a faulty TV. Then a flash. A tearing sound. As the volcano burst, I half glimpsed something with too many faces borne upon the fire flood's sizzling beast. Later, retrieving those remains, the spook show mistook them for young Miraclemans. Ah, so they thought it was young Miracleman who had perished there. It was young Nastyman. And again, much of this, like the inexplicable fight scene between the two of them, is reminiscent of comic books, a comic book trope. But things are taken to a greater extreme with the context of the real world. And the fact that he was in an Icelandic brothel with his woman, but she was just a corpse for the last 3 days. Then they end up fighting in the volcano. She's a much greater version of him, so she describes the lava as lukewarm against her thighs, but the longer they stay in there, it just completely obliterates him. When she says too many faces borne upon the fire flood's sizzling breast, I think that would suggest that his face had just basically flattened, melted off into pieces, you know. One eye somewhere, one eye the other place. When you'd reached Iceland, rumor mentioned fiends warring in a volcano, neither surviving. So she disappeared at that point. They had no idea that she existed. Recovering in the Arctic, you heard bulletins. A family named Miracle should cross the North Sea home. Their doctor had bad news. Believing yourselves warned about Gargunza's latest plot, you investigated. Unaware of what transpired, suspicious Dennis Archer was close to discovering how Gargunza diverted funds. Sensing impending doom, Gargunza murdered his assistant, fled with notes and dog to Paraguay. His furious employers now saw the Miraclemen as dangerous liabilities needing removal. Thus, heading home, you found something Gargunza designed years before, calming superiors frightened of your power allowing them the means of sanction. Dragon Slayer. Basically an A-bomb cloaked by holograms. This was the sky fortress you found, intended to destroy you. Returning home, I became Avril Lear, changing my name as a precaution. Training as a doctor, I embraced the quiet life, trading a world of neon thrills for one of endless women needing endless pills to pull their endless marriages, to dull their endless marriages. And yet, whenever I could be alone, I'd pull this perfect body on just like a glove, or a piece of fine, expensive hose, exulting in its singeing flesh and lucid crystal thoughts, tuning it secretly into an unsurpassed device of joy and excellence. I laid low during your re-emergence, your clash with Bates. When your friends next door exposed me, I followed your aura and my intuitions here. Presumably they're related to Gargunza's visitor, sent to keep high technology out of low-life hands. I don't know. I mean, I haven't thought this through. Tell them to go, Mike. Just tell everybody to leave us alone. I wonder if that's the baby talking, or is that his wife talking? Don't worry, the feelings I'm picking up from next door seem optimistic. Our guest is ready to leave. Any time now. Please, to prepare for the journey, have conversed with the home, and transport soon arrives. We'll take fallen brother to Metacrats, and this matter to tribunal as proper. Well, if you've contacted friends to come and collect you, I hope their mode of transport is discreet. No, not friends. To my humility, this matter of biggest importance requires enemies. Must also being consulted. Prepare eyes, please. They come. And these are their enemies. We saw this in one of the prior stories. I think it was one of the supplementary stories that was included in, I believe, the last volume. No, it's not. Wingless of helm and heel, yet no less heaven's messengers. She was smoke gray, her colleague Chinese white. Chinese white meaning not geisha girls, but the Chinese equivalent in terms of the Chinese opera, I would believe. He seemed familiar. Something about snowflakes. Young men fighting. In cut glass language, formal and precise, the two disparate species seem to reach a settlement. Is agreed. Altered ones shall accompany us for short while. Hybrid may remain here with mother animal. Hybrid. What's it saying, Mike? You're not going anywhere. Liz, if we're going to sort this madness out, I don't think I've got any choice. Please, Warpsmith's impatient and brother needing soonest medicine. Come now. Mike, no, you can't just leave us again. Liz, he said it's a short while, and this is important stuff about me, my origins. Liz, I'm sorry. Mike, don't you dare. One white hand made a no-play gesture. I was algebra, cold, subject to cold equations, effortlessly proven to be somewhere else. Across a bridge of radiant formulae, we climbed towards the overworld, leaving this realm behind, its paradises and its pains, its pleasures, and its purgatories. Purgatories are these bullies, again picking on this poor guy, which is only going to tempt the release of the worst of the Miracleman family by far. Look who! It is Master Bates. Genau, Master Bates. You biddy a wanker, yen, eh? He grassed us up. A nurse with a tits swaka fucking in. Sorry about this attempt at whatever this cockney is, but it's pretty awful. Looks like this guy has hate either tattooed on his fingers or just written on there. And another kid is smoking a joint. Chich. Not another beating. Try not to wet yourself this time, eh? Look at them laughing, retarded little maggots. They wouldn't laugh if I got my hands on them. You need only say the word. Look. Wouldn't the look on their faces be worth it? All you need to do. No. No, no, no. I don't dare. I don't care if they beat me or kill me or anything. I won't let you out. I won't. In this dark place, the enemy strained against the bonds that seemed more fragile than the finest thread, yet would not break. Though I might climb to the heaven's threshold, he'd not cease to pound upon the hell's gates. There's a swastika in the urinal. They're beating him up. There's lots of violent stuff. And in the very far corner, the farthest bathroom stall, it actually says Bissett eats shit, which would be Steve Bissett. That's a shout out to Steve Bissett. Before Swamp Thing ever even came out, but John Toleben, Steve Bissett, I guess, very old peers and friends. It's 1987. We abolished hell 2 years ago. Airwalking. I patrol a futurist Valhalla, where old scientific romance is rejuvenated, live again, live again. My hair is frosted stellar white. My tracking black like pencil beams. These wild storm-haunted strata of the heart are love's best stories, love's most necessary tears. In her compassion, she has shown the ugly, brilliant, dull, and beautiful alike, a love they understand, making them whole. Below, in London's fountain spray swept streets, upon its lantern-bangled bridges, black girls wearing ice blue sailor suits hold hands, whistle at boys with silhouettes tattooed upon their arms, showing their shirts as a cartography of artfully paced bruises. In nocturnal parks, where globe lamps hourly alter you, lovers kiss dwindling this splendid cosmos to a bead of pure awareness held between converging tongues. Adrift in these erogenous zones, I hear gorgeous thunder sound in distant rooms and feel the energy she's freed. A grid of quickened pulses that sparks blue across the arc gap between the fingertips upon a cafe table fires the human dynamo until its coils blaze white with power enough to make songs true and stop the night and turn the world. So he's describing a utopia of England down below. And this is 1987. There's a lot left to go on in 1982. There you see an unused concept for Miracleman 12 cover, pencil drawing on paper by John Toleben. So that's the end of part 1 of the final chapters of Miracleman, Alan Moore's Miracleman. This segment beautifully drawn by not Steve Bissett, John Toleben. So that's it for now. Thanks so much for listening. So very sorry for the long delay in finishing this. And I certainly hope to finish this next chapter, these next, I think I have 3 books left, right? 13, 14, 15. I'm very bad on that stuff, but hope to finish that soon enough. And so keep that notification bell ringing, I guess. I don't know what to say. Thanks so much. And if you have any comments, please leave them below. I'm happy to answer everything. And either way, I'll just give you a nice little heart because I have so few listeners that I'm happy to show the little bit of love that I can. Thanks so much. Take care of yourselves. Be safe. Be well. Stay distant. See you next time. Goodbye.